Oh, good.
It's all good, man. Talking about. Oh, good, man. Welcome into the NASCAR Live Before Lock shows. We're here to get you ready for today's Ally 400 that is scheduled to start in just over an hour from now. Well, I think if you've been following the radar, you know what I mean when I say that. Of course, we are sponsored by PrizePicks. Later on in the show, we'll talk about some of the props over at PrizePicks today. Of course, be sure to smash that thumbs up button. As always, appreciate that's a great way to show your support for the NASCAR Live Before Lock show. Of course, as always, I'm joined by Chris Pennell. Chris, obviously the biggest question people are going to have is the radar question, and radar looking better than the way it looked yesterday.
Hey, what's up, Jason? Looking forward to today's show. We haven't done one in a while. Feels like a long time, but glad to be back at Nashville. But yeah, speaking of the weather, yesterday it looked very doom and gloom. Looked like there was just about no chance of a race, but as of right now, not looking too bad. A guy I follow that does weather for NASCAR is saying 70 to 75% chance for rain today. So if you're following him, I think we're trending in the right direction.
Of course, but of course, we're going to break this entire slate down for you. We'll break all these drivers. And of course, if you got any questions, be sure to line that up in chat. So let's start a little roster construction here today. Obviously, we're looking for those dominators. Obviously, we want at least one dominator, but are you looking at some two dominator builds as well?
Yeah, I actually have quite a few two dominator builds here paired with a guy like Kyle Busch today, because he's not personally in my dominator group. Do I think he could be a dominator for like later stage 2, stage 3? Sure. But when I built my dominator group today, I was mainly putting drivers like Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Chastain, Hamlin, Byron, Truex, those kind of drivers starting closer to the front that can accumulate dominator points while Kyle Busch comes to the field. But with the way pricing is this weekend, at first I was thinking maybe just one of those drivers starting closer to the front paired with Kyle Busch, but it's actually pretty easy to fit two in and still have a really good lineup. So I'm fine with either one dom or two paired with Kyle Busch, but I think either are fine.
Yeah, obviously we'll talk about Kyle Busch, and there's a couple of drivers on this slate that are going to be chalky drivers just because of the place differential there. Of course, Kyle Busch starting at the end, starting 36, he's going to the back of the field anyway. So, and we've talked about that. It just really doesn't matter. Before we kind of get into breaking down, this entire slate in terms of track and tracks that you compare Nashville to, what are some of those tracks that people should be looking at some data on?
Yeah, so if people don't really know anything about Nashville, this is only the second time the Cup Series will be racing here. So not a whole lot of data to sift through like we would at a normal track like a Kansas or a Charlotte or something like that. So hard to find too many comparables, but this is a flatter surface. It's also concrete. And so looking at tracks like Dover, Bristol's also concrete, but not really a comparable track that I'm looking at this weekend. But the 6 that I think are the most comparable: Gateway, Charlotte, Kansas, Darlington, Dover, Richmond, either with some tire wear, a concrete surface, or a similar track length. And also you can throw in Phoenix in there as well. So just kind of all meshing that together, and what we saw in practice on Fridays, what I'm really kind of putting on my data to this weekend.
Now, of course, as we start to talk about the upper tier salary drivers in this one, this will be the drivers that are $9K and above over on DraftKings. Before I mention that, I guess we should kind of talk about that. You're let's just say, you're not BFFs with Fords today.
Yeah, they've really struggled in practice on Friday. Now, during qualifying on Saturday, when the clouds came out and the track got a little bit cooler, that's when we started seeing them picking up some speed. But if it's not going to rain today, and we do avoid that, it's going to be still pretty hot in Nashville. So I'm hoping practice does translate pretty well towards the race today. So yeah, Fords right now, not looking too hot. Blaney did show some speed, but outside of that, not looking too impressive.
Of course, let's get into these top tier drivers. I mentioned 9K and above over on DraftKings. So let's start with the most expensive driver today. He's starting in the third spot. Kyle Larson, 11,600 over on DraftKings, 14,000 over on FanDuel. When you're looking over all the tools and data we have over Awesemo.com, he is a guy that is definitely popping off in our model.
Yeah, he could definitely be a top dominator play today. The thing I'm doing is I'm currently underweight on Kyle Larson just to get exposure to some of these other guys in the 10K range. I just feel like he might be a bit over-owned compared to where, just from how he's priced compared to the other drivers in this price range, because it adds me more flexibility when I get away from some Larson lineups into some of these cheaper drivers. But I'm not saying he's a bad play today. It's just strictly from a roster construction standpoint in the lineups that I'm building. But if you're looking at what he did at Nashville last year, it's a one-race sample size, but he won the race. 175 DraftKings points, had an average running position of a 1.4, which is insane. a near perfect drive rating. Hasn't been quite as good as he was last year at similar tracks this season. So I'm kind of throwing that out a little bit. I still think it's impressive what he did at Nashville last year, but I think he can be a top dominator guy. But I think there's a few other drivers that I think have a better chance of getting up front today.
And of course, I'm mentioning over at Stokastic.com. If you had how many times I might potentially, say the wrong name, there's one for you over there at Stokastic.com. Check out all the tools and data we have over there. Of course, we'll mention about a promo we got going on here in a little bit. Now, the second most expensive driver in the slate is Kyle Busch. He's in the back of the pack, 36 in a backup car, 11,000 over DraftKings, 13,500 on FanDuel. I mean, look, in cash games, how do you avoid him in cash?
You don't. If you're not playing Kyle Busch in cash, please send me the head-to-heads today because I think you are nuts. But this is one of the reasons why I can't get to that much Kyle Larson. Like yesterday, when I was looking over the slate after qualifying, I was like, yeah, I want to get a decent chunk of Larson. But once I started building lineups, well, I wanted everybody else in the 10K range and up as well. And Kyle Busch starting in 36, he has a pretty nice floor built in there because outside of any issues, we're going to see him contending for a top 10. And if he's able to get up front at some point, he could very easily go over 100 DraftKings points today. We saw it early in the season at Las Vegas where he started in the very back, ended up actually getting up front during the race in a parts car. He's still keeping his primary car, even though he got some damage in qualifying yesterday. He had a top 2 car in practice on Friday's session. He's been arguably the most consistent and best driver so far this season, him and Ross Chastain. The only reason Kyle Busch isn't optimal today is if he happens to get into a wreck or he just kind of stalls out in 15th, which I don't really see happening. So I have a ton of Kyle Busch today.
In terms of GPPs, obviously he's going to get a ton of ownership. Yeah. Like, what do you do in terms of GPPs with him?
So if you're playing Kyle Busch in GPPs, which I am today, sometimes there's good chalk, there's bad chalk. Kyle Busch starting in the very back, it's pretty good chalk. I mean, outside of issues or guys wreck, I mean, yes, that can happen. That's why I'm not 100% locking Kyle Busch. But if you get up to 70, 75% today, I think that's totally fine. But if you are playing him, just know you're eating a ton of chalk. So instead of pairing him with popular drivers like a Denny Hamlin up front or a Ross Chastain, maybe opt to some of the other drivers we're about to talk about at lower ownership.
Of course, then we've got Chase Elliott. He is starting 4th, 10,700 over on DraftKings and even 13,000 on FanDuel. Obviously started right here in the top 5.
Yeah, and I'm actually preferring Chase Elliott over Kyle Larson today. You get one extra PD spot there. He's about $1,000 cheaper. I know he wasn't nearly as impressive in practice, but I love Chase Elliott on concrete surfaces. I think that's going to bode well for him today. We saw in the Xfinity series that kind of translated well for all guys. So I think that's going to happen for Chase Elliott here. He won at Dover early in the season, another concrete surface. He was also 4th in the 20 lap in practice, only behind guys like Kyle Busch, Ross Chastain, and surprisingly Bubba Wallace, who we're going to talk about a lot of when we get to the cheaper drivers. But yeah, Elliott at concrete surfaces, that's something I'm definitely going to consider today when building lineups. So I have a good chunk of them.
And of course, next up, we got Ross Chastain. He is starting 7th, 10,500 on DraftKings, 12,500 on FanDuel. And I definitely know he's in the I love him this week list in your book.
Yes, I have a lot of Ross Chastain this weekend. I got we're going to talk about him when we talk about PrizePicks here soon. He's in the majority of my lineups today. And I think you can play him in cash games as well. And before he was Ross Chastain of 2022, last year he was showing glimpses of upside, but he finished 2nd in Nashville last year, close to 70 DraftKings points. And he's actually averaging the most DraftKings points per race at similar track types this season and the most DraftKings points per race this year using the data set that I am looking at. So I see no real reason not to like Chastain. He gets it done just about every single week at any single track type. He was good at Dover earlier in the season. He's good everywhere. I'm be loading up on Chastain once again.
Then we have the driver that'll be starting on the pole. That's Denny Hamlin, 10,200 DraftKings, 12,000 over on FanDuel. Obviously going to be a popular driver here today and a chance to rack up a ton of early dominator points.
Yeah, I definitely think he has the ability to set sail for the majority of stage 1 here. Field window, we'll see how early these guys come in, but you can go about 70 laps as far as the field window is concerned. I don't think we saw anything from a competition caution from Bob. We can let you guys know if that comes up. If there was a competition caution, I would say that maybe hurts him in a little bit, but he still has the best pit stall, so no worries there. But he was a top 5, top 6 car in practice. I think the Toyotas are going to be quite strong this weekend. Starting on the pole, I've seen a very good spot to look good. He's got a Ford right beside him, which I'm kind of low on the Ford, so I think he should be able to lead the laps early on. If he's going to do that, hang around the top 5, top 6 for the majority of the day, which his practice speeds would indicate, I definitely think he's worth considering. Like if you're playing cash games, I want to pair Denny Hamlin with Kyle Busch. That's my most preferred pairing today as far as cash games go. He was also really good Dover early in the season. So I think Denny Hamlin looks like a solid play. Not a lock by any means, but I definitely think in cash games, he's a good way to go.
Yeah, just looked over at Bob's Twitter. I'm not seeing, he hasn't said anything about a competition caution today. The stages being 90 laps, 95 laps, and 115. Fuel around 68 to 73 laps there. So if we do say anything, of course, I'll monitor the weather situation as that goes on here, but we'll continue to break this one down for you. Next up, we've got William Byron, who is starting 13th, 9,900 DraftKings, 11,000 over on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think William Byron's a pretty solid play today. I do prefer the other guy right below him we're about to talk about because I think his ownership is going to be a little bit lower, but I have nothing bad to say about William Byron. He's got a pretty cool paint scheme this weekend. It's a white Valvoline, looks really nice. 5th in the 5 lap in practice, 6th in the 10 lap, 7th in the 15 lap. He's just usually solid just about everywhere. Like I said, though, I prefer Martin Truex, we're about to talk about, but if you want to play Byron around 20% today, I got no problem with that. You have a little bit of PD upside mixed in, and I wouldn't be super shocked if he got up front.
Speaking of Truex starting 10th, he's 9,700 on DraftKings, 11,500 on FanDuel. Just a slight difference in ownership, not too much, but just a little bit less than Byron.
Yeah, I want to take advantage of that. I'm hoping once it locks that we do see a pretty significant difference. I don't really think it's going to be the case. That's just my that's just my wish. But Truex did announce that he's not retiring, so there was a lot of takes going on that Truex is just kind of throwing it in this season because he's just going to retire at the end. But he said he's returning to JGR next year, so at least we know he's going to keep trying because he has something to look forward to next season. But he actually profiles pretty well at similar tracks so far this year. Picked up the most fast laps at Dover early in the season on the concrete track. He's good at flat tracks too, which we're at a flatter concrete track. So I think this is a track that does profile well for Truex. Average green flag speed wise at similar tracks this season is around the top 5. So starting in 10th, if people are going to overlook him a little bit, I want to get exposure to him because I think he could be a sneaky-ish dominator today.
Now we get into our first 4 driver. That'll be Ryan Blaney, who is starting 6th, 9,500 on DraftKings, 10,000 on FanDuel.
Yeah, if you're going to play one as a dominator, Ryan Blaney is really the only one that looks appealing to me. But even then, I'm pretty low on the Fords in general because if you heard me talking this entire time, I like a lot of these drivers that we've talked about. So at some point, I got to start hopping off the train. And Ryan Blaney, even though I like him, he's cheap and he's been actually pretty fast at some similar tracks this year. I'm just not going to be huge on the Fords here. He was 8th in the 5 lap in practice, which is fine. Borderline top 10 cars that went on for the 10 and 15, 20 lap is starting in 6th. I just don't see him getting up front and dominating over a Toyota or over a Larson or Chase Elliott today. So I think he's probably going to hang around 6th to 10th for majority of the day. And if that's going to be the case, that's not going to get done at his price point.
Of course, next up, we have another 4 driver. That's Joey Logano, who is starting 2nd, 9,300 on DraftKings, 10,500 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I'm not going to be huge on Joey Logano because I'd much rather get my exposure to Denny Hamlin on the pool. Like I said earlier, I do trust the Toyotas a little bit more. And starting in 2nd, while the price is nice, there's a lot of room for downside. Like if Joey Logano finishes 6th today, but he doesn't do anything in the fast lap department or gets up front at some point, that's just not going to get it done. So pretty low on Joey. I have some exposure to hedge my Hamlin on the pole, but it's nothing significant.
Then the final driver in this stage is we've got Christopher Bell, who's starting 9th, 9,100 on DraftKings, 9,000 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I like Christopher Bell today. I think he can be a bit sneaky here. He's starting in 9th and is the cheapest JGR driver, which I think you always have to have interest in. Like I said, I like JGR. I like the Toyotas in general, and they've been showing quite a bit of speed this weekend. He had top 10 speeds in practice, finishing the top 10 at Nashville last season, and he actually has the best average finish at similar tracks so far this year. 9th at Gateway, 5th at Charlotte, 5th at Kansas, 6th at Darlington, 4th at Dover, another concrete track, and 6th at Richmond. So I think he's going to hang around the top 8 for the majority of the day, and he certainly has sneaky upside to get up front if he can, do well on pit road today.
Of course, get access to all the great Stokastic Plus tools and content we have for nearly every DFF sport out there with a Stokastic Plus Platinum Pass. Of course, this gives you access to all the premium tools and data we have over at Stokastic.com, including player projections, ownership projections, lineup build, our top driver tool, premium to score channel, and so much more. And if you're a new user of Stokastic Plus Platinum, then we have got a great deal for you today, as you can save 50% off your first month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. All you got to do is click the link in the video description below to activate the offer, or you head to our join page and use that promo code NASCAR LBL, all caps, one word, NASCAR LBL for 50% off your first month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. And this is for new users only. And if you're just looking for a NASCAR pass, you can sign up for a Stokastic Plus NASCAR pass. Those start as low as $9.95 weekly. Of course, Fantasy Cruncher is an add-on. Highly recommend that you add Fantasy Cruncher to your account. So you're like in NASCAR. Sit there, you throw some groups together, throw some dominators, throw some place differential groups in there. Maybe you sit there, throw all the Fords in a group and say, hey, I don't want more than 2 of these guys. There's plenty of things you can do over there. And of course, when you hit that promo code NASCAR LBL, that lets the management here at Stokastic know that you heard about right here on the NASCAR Live Before Lock show. Let's move on to the next tier, the mid tier. So this will be the drivers that'll be the 8 to 6K range. So let's start off with Tyler Reddick, who's starting 16th, 8,900 DraftKings, 9,500 on FanDuel. I was watching your video from yesterday. Do you feel like Reddick is a boom bust type play for you today?
He's definitely a boomer bust guy. I feel like either whenever I roster Reddick, I'm either close to taking down a contest or I'm in the very back because his tire blew because he's trying to ride the wall or something. Tyler Reddick is not a driver you roster for consistency. Like for $200 more, if you want consistency, you can take Christopher Bell because you know what he's going to do. Tyler Reddick, could he win the race? Sure, but could he finish 34th? He could certainly do that as well. But he had a fast car in practice on Friday, starting in 16th. I like the price point. I personally have around 15 to 20% Tyler Reddick today. Third in the 1 lap in practice, 4th in the 5 lap, and 8th in the 10 lap. He was struggling early on, but was able to find some speed. He finished 30th at Dover, which is concerning, but again, issues. I'm not going to put him too much blame for him there. 16th at Gateway, 6th at Charlotte. He's a boomer bust guy. If I'd only play him in tournaments, and definitely wouldn't go there and cash games.
Something I want to throw out there as well. FanDuel does lock straight up at 5 o'clock Eastern time. DraftKings locking at 5:09 Eastern time. So once the show ends, you'll still have a couple minutes to get your lineups locked over there on DraftKings, which, well, it's something I got to do. I got to finalize some of my lineups here, doing that throughout the show. Cause I mean, look, I want to hear what Chris has to say. I got to see where I should go and maybe where I should not go. Next up, we got Alex Bowman. He is starting 12th, 8,700 DraftKings, 9,800 on FanDuel. So Alex, okay. What's his path to being optimal? Where he's starting at?
So Alex Bowman is going to have some of these guys in the 9K range bust. He's going to have some of the PD plays. I think in the lower 8K to upper 7K range has the bust as well, because he's in a tough spot. Because practice, he wasn't super impressive. 17th in the 5 lap, 15th in the 10, and 10th in the 15. The thing is, though, I like Alex Bowman on concrete. He's always been good at Dover. He finished 5th there earlier in the season. He finished 9th at Kansas, 10th at Charlotte, 13th at Gateway. Some of the similar tracks I've been looking at so far for this weekend, but he's in a real tough spot. And I got to be honest, I'm not super high on a lot of these mid-range drivers, because when I'm building lineups, and I'm sure a lot of people are finding the same thing once they're building, if I'm going to be pretty top heavy, 2 to 3 drivers in that 9K and up range. And then, once you start building, it's like, I can't fit in these 8 to 7K drivers as much as I'd like to. So, well, I don't think Bowman's a bad play necessarily. I think for this slate, that kind of price range is real tough for roster construction. And starting in 12th, I feel like he's going to finish around like 8 to 12 today, which isn't a lot of upside.
Especially when you think about roster construction, if you're going to team Kyle Busch with, anyone in the 9K range. You're going to have to start kind of going a little bit lower. And there are drivers that we know who people are going to in terms of that. Next up, we've got Kevin Harvick, who is starting 8th. He is 8,500 on DraftKings, 8,300 on FanDuel, and this is another Ford driver.
Yeah, I'm surprised he qualified so well. Like I said, though, for the second round of qualifying, or first round of qualifying for the second group, when the clouds came out, the Fords got a little bit faster. So I'm sure they're hoping for some shade today and a cooler track, but in practice on Friday, Kevin Harvick was awful. 29th in the 1 lap, 28th in the 5 lap, and 29th in the 10 lap. Starting in 8th, I would rather play any other driver in the 8K range personally. So I'd have very, very little Kevin Harvick today.
Next up, you got Kurt Busch, who is starting 19th, 8,300 on DraftKings, 8,800 on FanDuel.
Kurt's interesting because all the Toyotas showed a lot of speed on Friday besides Kurt Busch. He was 6th in the 1 lap in practice, but outside of that, 21st in the 5, 19th in the 10, 12th in the 15. But his teammate Bubba Wallace was the fastest car in practice, so I'm assuming they're going to share some notes there. I think the speed's going to come for him. I feel like all the other Toyotas, I'm not going to completely just dismiss Kurt Busch. So starting in 19th, I definitely want some exposure to him, only in tournaments though.
Next up, we got Chase Briscoe, who is starting 28th. He is 8,100 over on DraftKings, 8,000 on FanDuel. He is a Ford that's getting ownership, though.
Yeah, and I'm worried he's going to be a little bit overowned today because, like I said, when you're doing roster construction today, it's hard for me to get to too heavy in those drivers in the 8 and 7K range outside of some of the cheaper ones there. So I feel like people might be forcing in Chase Briscoe when they don't really have to. Because if you're forcing in Chase Briscoe, you're probably costing yourself one of those 2 or 3 9K and up drivers that I think have a lot more upside than Chase Briscoe. Like, he's no lock to finish top 10 today. If he's riding around 20th to 21st, yeah, it's fine for where he's starting, but that's not going to take down a tournament. So for me personally, I'm kind of even to underweight on the field on Chase Briscoe. If you don't play him in cash games, go for it, but he's not like a lock by any means.
Starting 4 spots ahead of him is Austin Cindric, and in 24 spots, 7,900 on DraftKings, 73 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I'm pretty much not touching Austin Cindric today. If he burns me, I'll live by it. I mean, rookie season so far, he's been pretty up or down for the most part, but practice was not kind to him. 26th in the 1 lap, 27th and 24th in the 5 and 10 lap, and 17th in the 15 lap. You got to keep in mind only 20 drivers ran the 15 lap run. So he just showed me no speed whatsoever. I feel pretty good about being underweight on Cindric.
Then you got Daniel Suarez, who is starting 5th, 7,700 on DraftKings, 8,500 on FanDuel. Great moment 2 weeks ago when he got his first win there. Great. If people didn't see that, it was just, with the embrace from not just his team, his owner, but the rest of the drivers of with him getting his first NASCAR victory here. What's your thoughts on Daniel Suarez today?
Yeah, it was awesome to be on Daniel Suarez a couple weeks ago. I kind of coming off of Suarez this week, like last week or 2 weeks ago, I had around 30% Daniel Suarez. I'm currently sitting around 10 to 12%. It's just a tough spot for him. And like I said, with roster construction, it's hard for me to get to a lot of these mid-range drivers without kind of like forcing them in. And starting in 5th place, it's not like he blew anybody away in practice. He was 14th in the 1 lap, 13th in the 5, and then 21st, 16th in the 10 and 15 lap. I think he could kind of hang around the top 10 today. But when you look at some drivers right below him, like Eric Jones, Stenhouse, and Dillon, that have place differential upside, it's a little bit easier to get to them.
Then you got Eric Amarola, who is starting 11th. He is 7,500 over on DraftKings, 7,700 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think he's kind of sneaky today. Both him and Daniel Suarez can be a bit sneaky because both these drivers, if what you're looking how they did at Nashville last year, Suarez finished 7th, Eric Amarola finished 4th. Like, they actually both ran pretty well. And Eric Amarola was actually one of the better drivers in the entire field at Nashville last year. He's always been better at the shorter flat tracks. I hate to call Nashville really a short track. It's 1.3 miles in length, but it's categorized as one. But Amarola showed some top 14 speeds in practice. He was 10th in the 5 lap. If you were trying to get away from the Jones Stenhouse chalk, I think Amarola is a pretty decent pivot there. I have similar exposure to Amarola to what I have with Suarez today.
Then you have Eric Jones, who is starting 23rd, 7,300 on DraftKings, 6,300 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I'm pretty big on Eric Jones today. I've just been a sucker for him all season. He just seems to drive better than what you'd think most weeks. If you're looking how he's performed at some similar tracks this year, 7th at Gateway, which was just a few weeks ago, then 10th at the concrete surface at Dover. I forget how many months ago that was, but it's still relevant. Starting in 23rd, he was P13, I believe, in the 1 lap in practice and went down to P19, but I think we have top 15 upside here. I do currently prefer him over Stenhouse.
Then you have Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He's starting 25th, 7,100 on DraftKings, 7,000 on FanDuel.
Yeah, Stenhouse wasn't super amazing in practice, and he's kind of tricky for me this week because I could see it going either way because he's good at concrete surfaces and he ran very well here last year. The problem is, though, with the flatter surfaces, he has been absolutely terrible so far this season. Like, he's always been qualifying in the back and he just kind of sticks around the back for the most part. Will a concrete overcome that? I'm not 100% sure. I have around 20% Stenhouse today. It's not as much as Eric Jones. I feel a little bit more comfortable with him. Plus, that price tag on Eric Jones on FanDuel is really nice. But I don't mind having a decent amount of Stenhouse today because I think the upside's certainly there, but there is downside. But I think for tournaments, you want to chase some of that upside.
Clintwood, I appreciate you in the super chat. He says, I'm always sad when Chris tells me not to play my guy Harvick, but if not for him, I'd play him all the time like an idiot.
It hasn't killed you too much this year, but I mean, just looking over the numbers, Harvick's in a really tough spot for where he's priced.
Austin Dillon, he is starting 20th. He's 7,000 over on DraftKings, 6,800 on FanDuel.
So Dillon kind of qualified right around where his practice speeds indicated. He finished 12th here last year. Austin Dillon's usually a very boring play, which, guys like Eric Jones and Stenhouse, they're kind of up or down. So if you're looking for maybe the more consistent boring play here, that's not going to stress you out as much. I don't think Dillon's a bad pivot down low. I mean, he's got top 10 upside just about at any single track type. So don't mind some AD, not excited about him, but he's one of those guys that gets filtered in your lineups if you're going 150.
AJ Allmendinger, he is starting 14, 6,800 on DraftKings, 5,500 on FanDuel.
Yeah, Dinger's not somebody I'm really getting to. And once we talk about the next two drivers, it's kind of makes sense why, because you're going to get a lot of exposure there. But starting in 14th, his upside's kind of capped. He was 20th in the one lap in practice, 26th in the 5 lap. Did finish 10th at Gateway, which is a shorter flat track a few weeks ago, but I think that's like the max ceiling for Dinger outside of a road course. So I'm going to be passing on Dinger outside of maybe a couple lineups.
Brad Keselowski, he is starting 27th, 6,600 on DraftKings, 6,000 on FanDuel.
So as much as I don't want to play Keselowski, I do have a decent amount today just because there's a lack of good options kind of in the 6K to 7K range that we've talked about. Like there's some fine guys, but if you're looking for some cheaper drivers that aren't complete pump plays, this is the two drivers that you're going to land on the most. And while he didn't show any speed in practice whatsoever, was a borderline top 30 car. I did finish 20th at Dover early in the season. So if he's going to give you a top 22 today, that's not going to kill you at $6,600.
All right. Are we getting all aboard the Bubba Wallace chalk train?
He is my highest owned driver today, even more than Kyle Busch.
He's starting 30th. So, I mean, obviously a ton of PD there. You mentioned about his practice times just a couple of minutes ago, 6,500 on DraftKings, 5,800 on FanDuel. I mean, which look, we talked about if you're trying to get to some of these really high end salary drivers, Bubba Wallace is going to offer you some salary relief.
Yeah, he makes that work. And I like him on both sides today. He's my highest owned driver on DraftKings, and he's my second highest owned driver over on FanDuel. It's just him and Kyle Busch, and are swapped on both sides. But I see no real reason not to like Bubba Wallace this weekend. I mean, I was going to play him no matter where he started, unless he was like starting P2 or something, because he had the best car in practice. Once you aggregated all the numbers, he was first in the 1 lap, second in the 5, first in the 10 and 15, and third in the 20. I mean, got a good short run car, got a good long run car. He looked really good. I like all the Toyotas this weekend, and MJ is at the track. So if you're looking for a narrative, I feel like they're not going to let him disappoint him. So I love Bubba this weekend, starting in 30th. Outside of him wrecking or something, which I guess is certainly possible, I think he's going to be in the optimal.
You say wreck, I said there was another word that came to my mind. Blown tire.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm sure it's going to happen to someone good today. You just gotta.
Oh,
not too bad.
Look, we can look at ownership data. We can look at our projections. We can look at dominator percentage, top 6%. 2.5. We can look at all that. There is no analytic out there that we can say whether or not a car could potentially blow a tire. I mean, it happens. It's
And it seems to happen to the best play every single week. So yeah. Bubba Wallace and Kyle Busch better be scared to start the race.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the question I have with Bubba Wallace is just ultimately is kind of, especially if you're doing multi lineups, at what point do you just say, hey, I'm not trying to have 75% Bubba Wallace?
Well, for me personally, I'm trying to see my 150 max spread right now. Yeah, I don't have quite 75. I'm in the 60% range, which I was considering locking him, but at the same time, there's chances where if he just finishes around 20th place, that might not get the job done if somebody else pops off from that range. Personally, my 3 max, though, I play this a little bit differently. I lock Bubba Wallace. Whatever happens to him, happens to him. I'm willing to live with it. I think the ownership is going to be insanely high. But, I mean, once you look through everything, I think we have him on the site projected in the 40s. I have him around 40s as well. I mean, that's killing it at $6,500.
The thing I will say is, like, when I'm thinking about my 3 max builds, it really comes down to is, do I just want to just slam Kyle Busch and Bubba Wallace just in all 3 lineups and say, you know what, I'm gonna ride with this train, and if this train crashes, well, but if they go out there and do what we think, how are they not optimal?
Right. And the thing is, even if they don't smash today, if you're playing a single entry or 3 max, you're not dead. Like, everyone's gonna have them. So if you hit on some of your lower owned guys, you can still do quite well, because I remember at Sonoma, I had Kyle Busch who finished 35th, and I still had like a top 20 lineup in the June bug. So some of these guys that they're insane ownership, you can still get there if they fail. But For me, though, I feel more comfortable locking in Bubba Wallace than I do Kyle Busch, just because like I love Kyle Busch today. But if a guy like Chase Elliott comes out or Kyle Larson, they lead 100 some laps, and Kyle Busch kind of stalls out around 10th place, they'll be knocking the lineup over Kyle Busch. So that's something to consider.
Vince, I appreciate you in the super chat saying, would you play Kozlowski and Wallace in the same lineup on DraftKings?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think a lot of people will do that in cash games today. I mean, just for where they're starting around 30th place, if they sniff the top 20, you're not going to be too upset about it.
Cole Custer, he's going to be starting 17, 6,300 on DraftKings, 5,000 on FanDuel.
Yeah, practice wasn't super impressive for him. Kind of like a borderline top 25, top 20 car. If you're looking at how he's performed at similar tracks this year, 29th, 21st, 22nd, 26th, was 15th at Dover, the other concrete surface. So if you're going to base it off of that, Cole Custer could be kind of sneaky starting at 17th, but he's just one of those guys where I think I landed on 8 to 10%. I just really mixed and matched all these cheap drivers because none of them really stand out to me.
Chris Buescher, he is starting 15, 6,100 on DraftKings, 4,500 on FanDuel.
Yeah, he killed at the road course 2 weeks ago. If you played him, you were rewarded nicely. Starting in 15th, though, him and Brad Keselowski, the two RFK cars, they were awful in practice. I mean, they were barely sniffing the top 30 as far as their practice speeds are concerned. I don't think they're going to be that bad during the race, and Buescher just have some track position to work with early on, but not super excited about Buescher today.
Of course, you got to check out our sponsor, PrizePicks. They got their daily prop-based contest. And when you use that promo code AWESOMO, they'll give you an instant first match deposit of up to $100. So you got to check out that over there. Click the link in the video description below to head to prizepicks.com or download the PrizePicks app in the App Store or on Google Play. And there are 3 as we look at the fantasy score aspect here. First off, let's talk, all 3 of these drivers we've already talked about. First one is Ross Chastain, 46.5.
Yeah, I think the number is way too low for arguably the best driver in NASCAR so far this year at similar tracks this season, which usually have around similar amount of laps. He's averaging around 52, 53 DraftKings points per race, which is the scoring PrizePicks uses. So if Chastain gets up front at any point of this race and dominates, as long as you don't see him wreck out, he's probably going to hit that over 46.5. I currently have him in the 60s as far as his projection goes, so I think it's pretty nice leverage.
Next up, we've got Martin Truex Jr. He is 40.5.
Yeah, starting in 10th, you get a little bit of a cushion there for place differential, but I do think he has dominator upside. I don't think he's going to be the top dominator today, but at similar tracks this season, like we talked about, and in concrete, tends to profile pretty well. I think I could see him getting in the low 50s today as far as his projection goes, so thought the number was a little bit low.
And Chase Elliott is the final one, which I know you like the over 41.5, so you got to really like the over to 39.5 now. Yeah,
I was very surprised Chase Elliott's number went down. Maybe people are looking at the practice speeds because he wasn't as impressive, but Chase Elliott on concrete is really good. And he's starting close to the front. There's a decent chance that he gets up front and dominates at some point. I think he's going to be a top 5 driver for the majority of the day. And at 38 or 39.5, I mean, that's not going to be too hard for him to, and if he gets up front at some point, he's going to kill that number.
Of course, be sure to check out PrizePicks. Go over to prizepicks.com, or you can download their app in the App Store. And be sure to use that promo code AWESOMO as an instant first match deposit of up to $100. Now look at the lower tier salaries for this one. So let's be the drivers who are underneath 6,000. Let's start off with Justin Haley. He's starting 21st, 5,900 on DraftKings, 4,500 on FanDuel.
Haley's actually one of my favorite tournament plays of the week. Not like overall, but as far as the cheaper drivers go, starting in 21st, I'm hoping he goes a bit overlooked because you have the like the trio of Ty Dillon, Burton, Gilliland as the drivers that are cheap with place differential upside that will carry some ownership. But he was a lot faster than them in practice, 18th in the 5 lap and 14th in the 10 lap. And if you're looking at some similar tracks so far this season, he finished 11th at Dover, and then 14th at Gateway a couple weeks ago. So I think the upside's there for him, or he could contend for a top 15. Meanwhile, those other drivers are contending for top 25s.
Next up, you got Michael McDowell, who is starting 18th, 5,700 on DraftKings, 4,000 on FanDuel.
McDowell's been pretty solid so far lately. He was pretty good at the road course last time out, and he finished 18th at Gateway, 8th at Charlotte, 7th at Darlington, 17th at Dover. I have no problem with McDowell. I just prefer Justin Haley with the couple extra spots further back.
Ty Dillon is starting 29th, 5,500 on DraftKings, 3,500 on FanDuel.
Yeah, Ty Dillon's probably going to do what he does every single week, where he's super slow in practice, slow in qualifying, but he'll probably avoid attrition and contend for a top 25. So starting in 29, $5,500. As long as he doesn't wreck, he's probably going to gain you some spots and he won't complain.
Harrison Burton is starting 26, 5,300 on DraftKings, 4,000 on FanDuel.
Yeah, Burton was not very strong in practice, posting basically around 30th place speeds for the most part. Also a rookie, so that's always a little bit of a concern as well. Finished 24th at Dover. Did have some good finishes at Charlotte and Darlington at 14th and 11th, 25th at Gateway. I'm not excited about Burton. I have around 10-ish%, but I would prefer the other drivers that we talked about so far.
Next, then you have Todd Gilliland starting 33rd, 5,100 on DraftKings, 3,000 on FanDuel.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be pretty popular as a punt play today, but like the other drivers, just very slow in practice, borderline top 30 car. But he's one of those guys like Todd Dillon where slow in qualifying, slow in practice, but if you avoid attrition, you get what Todd Gilliland does most weeks where he finishes 22nd, 16th, 25th, 15th. And if he does that, starting 33rd, he'll be pretty happy.
Corey LaJoie is starting 22nd, 5,000 on DraftKings, 3,500 on FanDuel.
I think LaJoie is pretty sneaky here. He did finish top 20 at Dover early in the season. I know there's not a lot of place differential upside starting in 22nd, but he finished 16th at Nashville last year, and his practice speeds were a lot better than all the other drivers we just talked about in this 5K range. 15th in the 5 lap, 16th in the 10, and 14th in the 15th. I don't think a lot of people are going to go to him. I think he's a sneaky play in tournaments as far as punts go.
Cody Ware, he's starting 31st, 4,900 on DraftKings, 2,500 on FanDuel.
I'll just tell you right now, Jason, these guys have no parts in my lineups today. They're all in the mid-30s for practice. They're slow. Unless there's like 15 cars that come out, they're not going to be optimal today.
So what you're telling me is when you're optimizing some rosters together, you just unclick the rest of the lineup here.
100% the first thing I did. I went to the bottom and unclicked the scrubs.
That's one of the things that I do in NASCAR DFS is there's just, it's the usual cast of characters. I mean, let's just be honest about it.
Yeah.
That it's either A, I'm unclicking them, or B, they're in a group that I just say at the absolute most, give me one.
Yeah. And there's really no need to go with these guys this weekend because I have a lot of, I even have some lineups with 3 10K guys, and I still don't need to go down there. Like I can comfortably fit those 3 in, a Bubba Wallace, and then I can play like a Haley with a Gilliland. And there's just no reason at all to play any of the scrubs today. They're going to be slow. They're going to go laps down. There's just no upside.
I've got nothing out of that. I mean, and I'm with you. I mean, I'm totally with you there. I mean, like, look, and if you're sitting there, you're putting some groups together. To me, that's the type of group I would go. I'd be honest with you, I put Fords in a group.
Yeah, you can certainly do that today. Go ahead.
No, and I'm just saying, just because of what we've seen so far. I mean, figure out, how many Fords you want to potentially have in a lineup. And then to me, you got to create a dominator group.
Yeah, and one thing you can look at it a different way too. If you think the track's going to be cooler, if it's going to rain or we happen to get a night race, if we get a delay, you could make where if you have a Ford, you want to make sure you get more Fords in that lineup because they're going to correlate well at that point. So that's taking it another step if you want to think about it like that. But it's starting to get into a little bit of a craziness for groups. Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing, and you brought up a great point talking about potential dominators, is what happens if Kyle Busch gets up to the top and can get some dominator points. I mean, I'm like, he's not in my dominator group. But I don't blame somebody saying, you know what, I think he can get to the top of the field and he can get some points. Yeah, the reason he's not in my dominator group, I think there's a chance he can dominate. I don't think that's out of the equation at all. I think there's actually a decent chance he could get up front at some point in stage 3. But if he does not, and you don't have any of those drivers starting close to the front, because someone's going to dominate. I mean, someone has to. It's just not going to be Kyle Busch at some point. There's a whole stage 1 or stage 2 that has to be dominated. So if they happen to have issues, that's the case where maybe it's just Kyle Busch in the optimal and you have a bunch of place differential plays. But I think you're going to need at least one of those drivers to pair with Kyle Busch today, because if you're just going to ignore all those dominator points early on, we have 210 total today. I mean, you're going to have to soak him up. So that's why I don't have him in my dominator group. But if he does dominate, it's just kind of like icing on the cake. Of course, if you got any questions, be sure to line those up right now. On the betting side of the equation, anything that sticks out to you? I don't really see any underdogs winning today. I would just be betting on Ross Chastain's the guy that I like a lot. Chase Elliott. Kyle Busch's odds did go up after a poor qualifying session. I think they were at plus 1,000 once they were released yesterday. I'm not sure what they're at currently. I don't know if you have it pulled up. I have not. I feel like it probably got bet down a little bit because that's a bit of an overreaction because going to the rear is not going to really mean too much as far as winning the race goes. So Kyle Busch is actually at, yeah, we only have the top 3 and top 5s currently listed.
Yeah.
On my end. So, well, looking at the old odds, I mean, it's really just Chastain, Chase Elliott, and I think Martin Truex Jr. would be a kind of a sneaky bet there for one.
Of course, about the last 15 minutes here left in the show will be about your questions. First, we're going to start over in our Discord channel. Do you or Chris have any GPP flyers you guys are liking for DraftKings today?
Yeah, it's just kind of ignoring like the big name drivers. I think guys like Justin Haley are going to go a little bit under the radar because obviously you have the Ty Dillons, Todd Gillens of the world, but Haley's in a spot where he could contend for a top 15 and he could definitely be outscoring those drivers if they don't happen to just massively hit top 20 finishes, which I don't think are super likely out of those drivers. I think Eric Jones is in an excellent spot for tournaments. Not saying he's going to be super low owned or anything, but I do think he's got the top potential for a top 12, top 15 finish. So those are some of the drivers I'm kind of nailing down low.
Let's see here. Let's get Stan. Any interest in Joey Logano?
I'm pretty heavy on Toyotas, Denny Hamlin, and a couple of the Hendrick drivers up front, like Chase Elliott and obviously Ross Chastain. So at some point, I got to get off some drivers. Starting in second, he's not going to have the preferred spot. I'm not huge on Joey Logano today. I feel pretty good about not having much.
Matt says, he goes, I could see fading Kyle in GPPs for the leverage. If he doesn't get into the top 15, he's not really worth the price as far as being optimal, but I'm not fading him.
Yeah, I have the same thought process. Like he could stall out in the 15th range, but for looking at practice numbers, like he's just not going to be somehow slow. They still have the primary car. Is it going to be harder to pass? Sure, but you're not really playing Kyle Busch for dominator points. If he gets a top 5 finish, we're talking around 70 some DraftKings points, assuming he had some fast laps mixed in there. So if you're fading Kyle Busch, you're hoping for issues. If that doesn't happen, probably going to end up being optimal today, and I wouldn't fade him either.
Byron or Bell GPP on DraftKings?
If it's a GPP, if you have some Toyotas in your lineup, I think it'd be nice to correlate it with Christopher Bell. If you have more so Chevys or like a Chase Elliott, I try to correlate it with William Byron. But for me, I believe a little bit more Bell today.
For single entry, Truex, Bell, or Byron, if you had to pick one.
If I had to pick one, it's going to be Truex for me. I think he's got the best chance to dominate out of those 3 drivers. Like what I saw in practice, and a lot of the numbers are pointing to him this week.
FanDuel GPP 2v2, Elliott and Byron, or Truex and Chastain?
I go with the Truex and Chastain route.
Of course, you got any questions, be sure to line those up in chat, and we'll get to them as we start to wind down this show. But if you want to earn some money promoting Stokastic products, join our new affiliate program, become a Stokastic partner, and get paid every time someone makes a purchase using your personal link. Any new member that you refer, you will receive 20% of that member's first 2 Stokastic payments for your friends. Share it on your social media or do whatever else you have to do to get people signed up. You'll get 20% of a new member's first 2 payments guaranteed if it's done through your personal link. For more information, visit stokastic.com/affiliate-program or follow the link in the video description below. Join, promote, profit with the Stokastic affiliate program. Over in our Discord, Danny asking, Rocket Rusher asking, Danny or Joey GPP? I'm guessing it's Denny, but
I was going to say Suarez Logano. It's not.
I'm guessing that has to be Denny Hamlin. Has to be.
Okay.
I can't see it being Suarez.
No,
that just would make sense.
I'd almost be tempted to say Suarez over Logano, but I'll take Denny there. I think he's got a much better chance to dominate.
Let's see here. Stenhouse or Jones GPP on DraftKings?
For me, I have more exposure to Eric Jones. I think he's got a better chance to finish higher.
Okay. For single entry, okay, for single entry, if you had to choose one, would you go with Bell, Truex, or Byron? And for your punt, LaJoy or Bell?
Punt, Bell.
How is Christopher Bell a punt?
If you're in a position where Christopher Bell is your punt, I'd love to see the lineup, but it's definitely Bell. As far if you mistyped it and asking for a punt, Gillen would be my favorite down low. But if you can afford Haley, I'd get the Haley.
I'm like trying to sit and go, okay, who could he like? Bell is not a punt.
Bilicki, maybe it autocorrected Bell.
Yeah, okay, all right, that one would make sense.
In that
That
case,
would make sense.
Dylan, yeah.
Yeah.
For the joy of it.
Chastain or Elliott?
I have more Chastain today. I love what I saw from him so far this season.
Yeah. Truex or Elliott?
That is tough. I think if one does well, the other will do well because they're both good at concrete, so they correlate well, in my opinion. For me, though, I believe I have Elliott projected higher.
Do you like pairing Haley and Dylan for your punt plays?
I'm not really going my way to pair Haley and Dylan together, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of Austin Dillon. As far as Ty Dillon goes, yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, both offer some PD upside, Ty Dillon more so, but Justin Haley has top 15 upside.
Kevin says best driver to take a chance on 8,500 or less on FanDuel.
Over on FanDuel, 8,500 and less. I believe I have the most of either Eric Jones or Eric Almirola as far as those guys are, or Chase Briscoe too.
Is it bad to have Chastain be the only top 10 driver in my lineup? Had enough left for Bowman, but other than that, just Haley, the next highest starting position.
If Justin Haley's the next highest starting position in that lineup, I would have my concerns. If Chastain can get up front in stage one and Denny Hamlin or an Elliott or whoever, Larson, doesn't lead the majority of stage one, you'll be fine. But I would like to probably have two for the most of my lineups.
Speaking of stage one, Steven brings up who will be the dominator for stage one.
And the most likely candidate's going to be Denny Hamlin. If it's not Denny Hamlin, I think it's Chase Elliott early on. Maybe later on in stage one, you see a Chastain or a Truex pull through, but I think it's either going to be Hamlin or Chase at the beginning.
Suarez or Almirola?
Almirola I feel a little bit better with. It was a little bit faster in practice and good at these track types.
Nate says, would you rather take Kurt Busch and Eric Jones or Christopher Bell and Austin Dillon?
I would take the Kurt Busch route in that one. Feels a little bit more balanced to me.
As I mentioned, if you do got any questions, line those up in chat. We got a couple more minutes here left in the show. Appreciate everyone in here on a Sunday afternoon. Be sure to smash that thumbs up button. That does help us out a ton. Of course, subscribe to Stokastic right here on YouTube. We got shows for you each and every day. Of course, all week long, we get you ready for all the MLB action that is going on. Of course, myself and Pete are here on Thursdays and Saturdays for UFC content. Of course, got a pay-per-view coming up this weekend. And of course, myself and Chris were here before every NASCAR race. Vince, last man in, Suarez, Almirola, or Jones?
For me, it'd be Jones there. Almirola and Suarez are interesting in tournaments, but I think Jones is going to be the better projected driver there at the end of the day.
Who's the driver we're not talking about?
We haven't talked much about. I mean, we haven't, besides the very beginning of the show. I mean, we haven't talked about Kyle Larson at all.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up all the stats. I mean, from last year, in terms of, if he goes out there and dominate, like as we were just talking a second ago, and I was thinking about roster construction. I'm like, okay, what if you have someone who goes out and dominates the way Kyle Larson did last year? Okay, there's your one dominator build. And it makes me think about how many people, as they're finalizing their lineups right now, are thinking dominator versus place differential, that maybe, they're just really trying to maximize all these place differential drivers.
Yeah. The thing is, though, last season we saw where a guy like Kyle Larson could check out for the majority of the race. He did that many, many times last season. We're not really seeing that this year. I know at Martinsville, we kind of just saw it be the Chase Elliott and William Byron show, but outside of that, we've seen multiple dominators with this next gen car. I mean, things tend to get just screwed up. It feels like every 20, 30 laps. So I wouldn't count on a main dominator. I was trying to pull up the old Nashville optimal lineup from last year. I'm not sure. Okay, yeah, I have it. The Ally 400. Okay, so with Kyle Larson leading just about the entire race, the starting positions for the other drivers were Bell in 25th, Kurt in 30th, Chastain in 19th, Stenhouse in 14th, and Suarez in 22nd. So if it is just a one dom race, yeah, if you want to load up on place differential, that's fine, but I don't think that's the way it's going to happen.
Vince, appreciate you there with the super chat. Of course, ask any question you want, we'll get to you. Gillen or Burton?
Gillen for me, both are slow and both are bad, but at the end of the day, they'll probably gain some spots.
Truex, McDowell, Jones, Chastain, Bell, Amaral, GPP. So I'm guessing he's throwing that out as a lineup there. Michael McDowell is just one of these guys I don't really trust a ton.
Yeah, I never trust Michael McDowell. I prefer Justin Haley. I forget some of the other drivers that he mentioned, but getting the money for Haley, I'd rather get to him. But McDowell has been okay the past few weeks, so I understand maybe wanting to chase in the high hand there. But I think overall for tournaments, it's fine. You mentioned Almirola. He's going to be a low-owned play. You have some of the chalkier drivers mixed in there, but that's fine as long as you have some low-owned plays.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing when that line I mentioned, the two names I thought were mentioning are two guys that are going to get massive amount of ownership, and that being Kyle Busch and Bubba Wallace.
Yeah, that is for sure. It's nice to have it mixed in with guys like Almirola and McDowell, though, because they're not going to be as highly owned. So that's one way you can kind of play chalk and get away from completely chalky lineup. But yeah, those two guys are definitely going to carry a ton of ownership today.
Yeah, that to me is, and everyone's going to make their own kind of decision on that one. I mean, look, if you sit there and say, hey, I'm going to lock him in, you know, I mean, the problem is, like, if you're in some of these bigger GPPs and, you know, you're not max entering them, you're gotta look at those guys and just, like, if you don't roster them, you're praying that those guys have a bad day, because if they have even a halfway decent day, they're going to rack up a ton of points.
Yeah. If they don't, even if they're not optimal, they don't completely smash, you're going to see a lot of people still cashing with them in their lineups. Like if Kyle Busch finishes 10th today, is that going to be optimal? Hard to say. Depends on what the other drivers do, but you're still going to see some pretty high lineups with Kyle Busch in them, with Bubba Wallace, even if he doesn't smash and finish top 12 today. So definitely something to consider. But if you are someone that's trying to take a big chance and something happens to Busch or Bubba Wallace, like maybe they wreck each other coming through the field. I really hope that doesn't happen. Hopefully I didn't speak it into existence, but you'll have some massive leverage on the field.
Of course, I mentioned about lock for NASCAR over on DraftKings, 5:09 Eastern time. Lock on FanDuel is right here at the top of the hour of 5 o'clock. So you got 7 minutes to lock those lineups over on the FanDuel side of the equation. Of course, you got a little bit more time there over on the DraftKings side of the equation as well. We mentioned about some of these drivers that are in the high 8K range, that they're really going to need some of these 9K drivers to bust. And, Tyler Reddick is the one that I keep going back and forth on what to do with him today.
Yeah, he's definitely a driver that I could see going either way. Could he be top 5 at the end of the day because he was third in the 1 lap and fourth in the 5 lap in practice? Sure, I could certainly see that happening, but I could also see him finishing near the back because he's trying too hard. Like he's obviously an excellent driver. He's got a ton of skill and talent, but sometimes he pushes it too hard, and that leads to either flat tires or he scrapes the wall. So if you're playing Reddick, you got to be concerned that it could go either way. Maybe try to pair him with some more consistent drivers to balance it out.
Ty Dillon or Todd Gillen on DraftKings GPP last driver.
Ty Dillon's a little bit faster in practice. He's a veteran driver. I trust him a little bit more.
Yeah, of course, we've got 5 minutes here, and so we're going to lock here on FanDuel. Give you some time to lock in those rosters. Any final thoughts you have for the audience here, Chris?
No, hoping the rain doesn't screw us. I would hate a rain-shortened race. I just hope we get the full 300 laps in. But I'm hoping for a boring race, no flat tires. Hopefully, I'm sure it'll happen. Just hopefully not to any of my high-owned drivers. But anything else besides that, I would just say really good luck.
All right, good luck to everyone today. Appreciate everyone tuning in for the NASCAR Live Before Lock here, right here on the Stokastic YouTube channel. Be sure to smash that thumbs up button. That's going to do it for us here today. Appreciate everyone tuning in, and we will talk to you next week on the NASCAR Live Before Lock show. Good luck, everybody.